Wormhole. Provisional government. Oh yeah. Dabo girls.
I think
Docket
that's
pylons.
pretty good. I didn't hear.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Roundabouts. Pimp cup of the prophets. Oh yeah.
Okay, I guess I'll start.
It's time for the rules of acquisition.
All right.
Wormhole.
Hello, welcome to Rules of Acquisition podcast, where we'll be going through every episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. With me is James Nolan.
Hello.
And Hugh Crawford.
Hello.
And I am Wade Bowen. And the first question I have for the two of you is, why are we doing this again?
Who's going first?
You can go ahead, James.
You go. I think this may have been my suggestion. I love Deep Space Nine, and no one else I talk to does. Seems to. So I know you guys do. So I wanted to see what we could make of it. I think there's a lot of things going on. I think it's a pretty great show. And I think it's really interesting about where it fits in television and it's at that time and like where television has gone now. So I think it's a way to like, you know, there's something because it's a part of like dork culture, but I think there's a lot more sort of more interesting layers going on for that time, for the 90s and what came after it in dork culture and sort of nerd culture and just basically culture now, because it's pretty much the same thing. So I'm interested in exploring that on a weekly basis, and talking to you guys, because nothing's more fun than talking about bad 90s sci-fi. And there's some of that here.
You, sir.
Let's be honest. There's some of that here, so that's why I want to do it. Hugh, what's your reasoning?
Yeah, I'd kind of, build on what you said a little bit. I think that right now we're living in a golden age of television.
Uh-huh.
So I think Deep Space Nine in particular is interesting to see as like a precursor to a lot of what we like streaming on the streaming services. Movies are basically short stories, and television is basically like the great American novel.
Big old novels, yeah.
Great novels.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that previous Star Trek episodes, with Kirk and to another extent, the Next Generation, they work as like one-off almost. It could almost be an anthology. But Deep Space Nine, on the other hand, is like one long story.
Mm-hmm.
They set up everything in this first episode, and some of the stuff doesn't get resolved until the very last episode of the series.
Oh, yeah.
So in that sense, it's basically one long Star Trek story from beginning to end, and I think that's fascinating. And I don't think that, I think it's one makes an interesting precursor to the golden age of television that we're living in right now, and worth examining.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to hang out with you guys, but
and you just happened to see all of Deep Space Nine.
Yeah. Well, I do have a soft spot for Deep Space Nine. It's the first Star Trek I remember seeing from the beginning, watching the first episode with my parents. I know a few people that hold a soft spot for Deep Space Nine, but
they're the smart ones.
But I'm not doing podcasts with them.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, where do we all come from on this?
Yeah. Well, it's funny that before we even get, well, maybe I'll let you do the description, but as episodic or television that telling a whole arc, and I always thought of this that way too, but even this first episode, this time rewatching it, I watched it as just one Star Trek episode of classic Star Trek, almost like space Twilight Zone, with one story, and it works really well. Just as like, a guy who goes through some trauma and has to resolve it in one episode.
Yeah,
and opens up like a space highway. And, Yeah.
Okay, so the name of this episode is Emmisary. It first aired January 3rd, 1993, and according to IMDb, It says, when the troubled Commander Sisko takes command of a surrendered space station, he learns that it borders a unique, stable wormhole. Director David Carson, writers credited Gene Roddenberry, of course, based upon the Star Trek created by Rick Berman, and let's see, there's 4 more credits.
Michael Piller is the big one.
Yeah, Michael Piller. Yep. So, yeah, that's what we're dealing with. It's the very first. It's the pilot episode. Like Star Trek: The Next Generation, you've got the characters from the previous Star Trek iteration kind of helping kick it off. Not so gently this time, because when we first see Picard, Picard basically is responsible for the death of Commander Sisko's wife, which brings the grand total of Starfleet spouses that he's responsible for the death up to 2.
Yeah,
right.
That's true. Yeah,
he's up to 2 now, right? And I think So
sorry, Mr. Crusher.
Dr. Crusher's husband. He's responsible for the death of, and poor Sisko's wife.
Yeah, he's less loving towards Picard than Dr. Crusher.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got real fuck you eyes in this.
Yes. Oh my God, I loved everything about that. That was like a weird gauntlet. I thought that the creators put down on this episode. It was like, oh, we'll bring in Picard, but we'll treat him like a sack of shit. Like, you bring him at his lowest moment, and then you bring our hero, Avery Brooks, in and just basically just treat him like he's the stankiest bitch on the street.
And Picard knows it too. Picard knows he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, he
just has to sit there and eat it.
Yeah, he's like,
and pour fucking tea.
And at first I thought it was awkward that Picard doesn't say anything. Like, hey guy, I was, that was hard for me. I was a victim. He doesn't say any of that. He doesn't say anything.
Because he's British.
Yes. But he's not really. He's French.
Right. Well, yeah.
But yes, but Patrick Stewart's instincts are all British.
Can't talk about feelings.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I loved about it. I know we talked about it like as standing alone, as as a piece of just one, what is it, 90 minutes?
Well, yeah, but it clearly sets up everything.
It does, but that beginning, if you were not familiar with Best of Both Worlds, that's a weird intro.
Oh yeah,
there's like a robot guy. He's killing everybody.
I mean, it does the Star Wars crawl at the beginning.
Well, they try to give you like a little thing, but it's like robot guy killing his family, but now he's like the good guy, and they don't explain, and I don't want them to, because I watched that shit and I know, but from a standalone piece of television, it was like something weird, robots, whatever, move on.
Right. I think what you're saying is right off the bat, they're like, this ain't amateur hour.
Yeah,
we're gonna incorporate a lot of shit.
Yes.
This is the different, in this point in time in Star Trek's history, you had the people who just it was in syndication, you knocked off school, you watched it and had a bowl of cereal in front of the TV, whatever. And then there were the other people, the people who were buying the fucking books, right?
the guys editing for Memory Alpha. Yeah.
Yeah. The people, this is the first series for the people who are buying the fucking books. Mm-hmm. Because you've got species that were introduced, all coming into play in the big ways, in Deep Space Nine. Yeah,
I remember watching every week watching Star Trek, and then when they announced the end of it, and they're like, they're doing a new series, and then the launch to this felt like a big event to me. It was the first event television that I remember almost.
Wow.
Going in, it's like, okay, and this is going to set forward. So when I was talking about, it actually works well as a one-off, because I've never looked at it that way. Even when I started watching it, I was like, okay. In so much that in some ways I was disappointed when I watched through part of it the first time, and then later on, it's like, and how much they set up in this first episode, but then realize that nobody cares as much, so they don't spend as much time on it. Like all the religious stuff, and him being the emissary, they do it, but it's just as much because they have to.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, like they start off the emissary here and all of that stuff. Like then the last season, where we're going to be spoiler good, so never mind. But like by the end of the season, by the end of the entire show, like 7 seasons later, they're doing the emissary stuff and like where that ends and like yeah, and Odo's parents. I mean, they setting that up now, and the fact that I mean that was like. I don't know how much they knew about who Odo's parents were or where Odo came from, but like
they knew they were going to get to it.
Yeah, and they set it up as I mean, it's all in that episode. He came from the Denori belt or whatever they called it, which is near the wormhole. He was probably he says I'm probably from the Gamma Quadrant. So I don't know.
Right.
Because it opened the wormhole opened near where he was found.
Yes.
Right.
And that's where they found the orbs too. So
right. So he thinks he's somehow connected, and he could give two shits about what happens on that station until they say that.
Yeah.
Right. But basically, the first half of this is just introducing all the characters.
And slowly, good and slowly, too. Right? I like that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry.
You'd think maybe that they would rethink having civilians on military missions. They're like, oh, yeah, your wife's dead.
Well, okay, I was going to say this. I know I'm supposed to be the guy that accumulates all the trivia, so I've got to read through all that stuff and sort of bring trivia to the table here.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Well, no, but and I'll sprinkle it. It's peppered. My observations will seem peppered with research. One of the things that I looked up on here was that the Saratoga, the ship at the beginning that he was the first mate of or whatever, that got killed by Picard. That was the first time that family members were shown on a sub-Galaxy class ship vessel. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that most of them they didn't. Only the Galaxy classes had like family members on the ships. But like at the time I was reading that, I was like, I guess that's interesting trivia, but that's the kind of trivia that I think dumps Trekkies. Because I'm kind of like fucking nitpicky Trekkies, you know. But you just made up a point that was like, yeah, that uses that to like some interesting effect. So...
yeah, maybe we should go ahead and mention that as far as our vision for the show, that we're not looking to be your hard... well, you know, they were using this class, the shuttle there, and blah, blah, blah. No, I love that. And any nerds out there that want to yell at me for that stuff, I love you.
That's one thing. It's like there's so much you read about. It's like, you know, because I come from it from a not... like, my interest in Star Trek, I would say, is an aberration to my interest with a lot of hard sci-fi. That's not something I'm interested in, but for some reason I'm interested in Star Trek. And so what's most interesting to me is what's interesting me in everything is give me some good characters, give me some good emotional language, some emotional development, give me some growth, give me some crying, not a lot of crying, but I need a little bit of crying. Give me some wants and dreams and some failure. I need to see that. I need to see it. Yeah. But then when I was going through this, half the things I look about is about the design of the runabout and the design of Deep Space Nine. I was like, I don't care about none of that shit. Like, I literally don't care what Deep Space Nine looks like.
Yeah. Well, it's too bad they spend the whole credit sequence showing you different angles of the station.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas in all the other ones, they're like, look at us travel through the universe and the galaxy. Here's one side of the station. Here's another. Here's that
comet.
And the station is designed by the Cardassians, the bad guys of the series.
They got to look like bad guys, yeah.
And why couldn't it? You know, it would have been interesting if the Cardassians had taste. I mean, if they're the bad guys, just because they're the bad guys doesn't mean everything's got to be so cold and ugly.
And they super, super uncomfortable looking outerwear for their soldiers. with the pointy chest thing. I'm like, that. Yeah,
it's like, you don't have to telegraph that. It could have been a very interesting thing if they had a flair for pastels or something.
Especially around their weird neck veins.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I always assumed that Cardassians had almost a weird crab-like physique underneath the armor thing. Like the little, like the neck thing was part of the back plate or something.
Oh, they might.
But who knows? Yeah.
The young ones are blue-shelled, so they're really easy to crack open. You can eat their shells.
Right. You could crack them open and eat them.
But like that was the thing I was thinking of, is that, but on the other hand, this show is like gets really deep into like lore and religion, and I'm interested in that stuff. I'm just not interested in the runabouts. or the warp engines. So, well, these don't have warp engines, but yeah, whatever, So that's where I stand. Just give me some character.
I think that this series, one of its greatest strengths is the fact that it takes a nice long look at how religion fits in, alongside a society that is run by essentially science. But it's also its greatest weakness too. I think that its greatest strength is also its greatest weakness.
I think they got really into having an Oscar-nominated actress to play one of the religious. This isn't in this episode at all, but this later on in the series.
Yeah.
And she's not. She was really good in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I'm not trying to take that away from Nurse Ratched, whatever her name is. What's her real name? Does any of us know?
I used to. She's from my hometown of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh shit. Yeah, I don't know her name, but yes, her.
I saw her at a film festival one time.
Oh really?
Where she introed One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Yeah.
Was she nice?
Yeah, she was great. She's super nice and talked about how she hadn't done anything except for that in Deep Space Nine.
She hasn't, has she? I don't remember her name. But anyway, she was great on the show, but no, she was great in that. But she was chewing some scenery in this show, and I remember there was long stretches of episodes where I'm just watching her kind of overact.
Well, you didn't see anybody overacting in this first episode.
I totally. Yeah. Most of my comments are acting notes. So.
Does Cisco have PTSD or is it just bad acting? Is that
Okay. Can we talk about Cisco? Because I got hit and his acting performance. Because I have.
Oh, I think he's fantastic.
You think he's?
I think he's good later in the series. I think he's in this. It's like if it's PTSD, it might be genius, but I don't think it is because he's like, then talking.
Okay.
Or just touching his son on the face.
I think that maybe I don't think they let him off the chain. I think that they're really careful with this first episode on the characterization of their new main character. And I don't know.
You think he's being Obama?
I feel like
where the first year of Obama's presidency where he couldn't be angry, he couldn't get upset, he couldn't, all of these things because you don't want because I don't know, the boxes we put black men in.
Yeah, I think they're carefully managing. I think in some scenes you can see Avery Brooks making deliberate choices. Mm-hmm. And I think in some scenes he's doing what he's told because there's a green screen behind him,
Yes.
And he doesn't know what he's looking at. And he's just being, and he's just. So, yeah, I think that part of the problem is that he's in Star Trek. And part of the problem is that I think some of the writing, some of the dialogue is a little ham-fisted, right?
A little bit.
Right, and it seems like it's like him struggling with that and just, all right, I'm going to go for it, but it's levels, it's spikes, where he's just going and then he lashes out.
Okay, so most of my notes that I took were actually on Avery Brooks' performance. I'm in the middle. I think that he is spotty in this episode, but nothing was contrasted that more. But then pretty early on, after they get off the Saratoga, is that what it's called? After they shoot off in the escape pod away from Picard, there's this moment, and I get the feeling that he chose to do that moment. It's where the escape pod, they did the rear view of the escape pod shooting out, and he does a quick angry jerk. As the escape, it's part of the Star Trek shaking set thing, but he does it in such a deliberate and intense way, and he immediately he jerks and then immediately snaps back to his original position and has no facial expression whatsoever because he just watched his wife die, and you're seeing behind it the Borg blow up the ship and everything, and I was something about watching Avery Brooks do that was one of the most intense acting choices and probably one of my favorite acting moments is in Star Trek.
Star Trek.
Yeah, and then the next scene is him with Jake, which, oh my God, Jake. I know he's a 14-year-old boy, but still. Okay, with Jake in the fishing hole in the holodeck, and he is Tommy was so bad in that scene. And I think that, and then you have the scene with Picard later on. I think he may be a talent sponge. He may be as good as who he's with.
Ooh, okay. Interesting.
So when he's with, let's say, Terry Farrell, is that her name? The Dax?
Yeah.
Yeah. We can't call her Terry Farrell because that's just confusing.
When he's with Perry Farrell and they're hanging out behind Lollapalooza. No, when he's with Terry Farrell or Farrell, whatever her name is, Dax.
We're going to call her Perry Farrell from now on.
Perry Farrell. When he's with Perry Farrell, and I'm sorry, in these first couple of episodes, she's so bad.
Yeah.
That's his addiction.
Dax's addiction is so bad that I think that I feel like he maybe plays to their level. You know, like when you're playing ball with your kids.
Yeah, I get that because he's pretty good in those Picard scenes.
He's good in both Picard scenes.
Yeah.
And he's kind of, I know it's weird and he's just there in like a shining light, but like he's good in like when he gets like later on when he's talking to like the spirits of the wormhole or whatever. Mm-hmm. He's good in he's Star Trek good. Let's say that. Right. He's Star Trek good in those scenes. So he's really rose to the occasion.
Yeah, because he's acting his ass off.
Yeah, including the scenes where he's talking to Jennifer because he's pretty bad in this scene.
She's worse than
she's the worst than Jake. Yeah.
Yes. Also, I would just like to point out that in the advanced.
Listen, I felt he didn't have a whole lot to work with in some of those Jennifer scenes.
Oh my God!
I think he's doing the best. He's like this. There's not a whole lot of meat on the bone here. Mm-hmm. I gotta figure. And he probably doesn't have a whole lot of time to like build off of it. I think I think that
he's making choices and he's going for it, and it just doesn't work.
But I know, but I'm not saying it's because he's a bad actor. I just think it is maybe circumstantial.
I think he's a great actor. I think he does some bad acting in this episode, though.
I'm just going to make a blatant statement that outside of Patrick Stewart, and maybe Leonard Nimoy at his best, Avery Brooks is the best actor on Star Trek. On anything Star Trek.
I would agree. And I think that sometimes, I love his choices. Sometimes he talks just barely above a whisper. Uh-huh. Have you noticed that?
Yes.
And that's like my favorite thing. He actually has you leaning into the damn TV. You know what I mean? He like draws you in.
And when he's got a good line, like that scene where he comes in to meet Kara for the first time, and she goes, I assume you want your office. And he was like, well, I was going to say hello, and then I was going to take the office. Yeah, like, that's a great line. And he delivered that like, awesome. And he did it with that whisper. I was going to say hello. And then I was going to take the office. But we could do it any way you want.
But how about the other scene with Kira where she's like hauling shit around and she's like, I assume you Starfleet guys don't like hard work, and he looks around and he just picks up something at random and shoves it somewhere, and then he lifts up his arms like, what now? And that was so weird and wonderful, but at the same time wonderful.
Yes.
I felt like that was like all his idea. I don't know, but
when you're written a line that I hear Bajor is a beautiful world, like that you're talking, like I don't know, like because that's what it was a Tommy Wiseau level. I hear Bajor, it's a beautiful world. it was such a strange delivery and so poor, and I think probably like it may be the way Star Trek shoots is they got to do a lot of scenes, and then like they're gonna say cut, and then Jake's got to play the prophets of the wormhole, and like, well, what is linear time, Dad? I don't understand the past, Dad, or whatever he's got to be saying in those scenes. I think it's probably, if you put yourself there, it's a weird position.
Oh, it has to have been.
Yeah. And Terry Farrell sucked at it. I read about it. She thought she was going to be fired in this episode.
Really?
Yeah, she apparently got there late. Like, she was a late hire. And so, like, they had already filmed, like, mini scenes, and so like at the end they were just kind of like gonna do all the Dax scenes, and so
that makes sense.
And so Dax,
it feels like that almost.
Yeah, and then so Dax addiction comes in, and they just like throw some spots on her face, and then like say start acting. By the way, you're 356-year-old man, and so they do all of that, and she apparently sucks, and she's blowing takes because she's the one that's got to say like the neutrino fields around the Plaxar plasma is, she's got to deliver those lines.
The techno battle.
Yeah, there's a large number of photons or
Yes.
protons coming out from this area.
Yeah, or neutrinos and the protons in the front. Yeah, she's the one that's got to deliver those lines, and she's awful. So, like, I think that she thought the whole time, she was like, I thought I was getting fired. And she said, I kind of was happy about that. And so I think that may have, like, just no one was comfortable shooting it. Though their shooting budget was higher than Undiscovered Country.
What?
Yeah. Their shooting budget for this.
Where did the money go?
Yeah, right. Because I love this episode, but Undiscovered Country is a little bit better.
Yeah, Undiscovered Country is the best, in my opinion, the best Star Trek movie.
It's my favorite too. Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Is it not? I like it more than Khan, and I like it more than Whales.
Wow.
The Whales I never liked very much.
It's the end of the Cold War with like I like all of that.
I mean, Khan is hard to beat, but I do have a soft spot for Undiscovered Country.
Khan's good, don't get me wrong, but it's written and directed by the guy who did that movie. So I mean, and also the 2% Solution, which is a great movie, a great Sherlock Holmes movie that he wrote and directed. But
okay,
anyway,
not Star Trek. Don't care.
But nonetheless, good. No,
I mean I do, but not now's not the place.
Not Star Trek. But no, yeah, it apparently had a bigger budget, and I think maybe they're including like because they had to build all the sets and everything for like a new show
For the whole series, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, so like I think.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, and that may be including like all like Avery Brooks's first year's salary, as opposed to whatever they paid Christopher Plummer and Nicole Nichols or whoever to be in Undiscovered Country. How much could Walter Koenig cost to get in a movie? So I mean,
I think he paid to get in.
I pay you just to be in a show.
Right. Chekhov had to get his checkbook out to show up.
It's like making movie in Russia. No, okay. So since we're going through the plot pretty linearly here, why is
you making a point of saying linearly?
Literally, yes. No, what is the point of keeping Quark on the ship? Because I get it at the end of the episode because they're like they're
if the biggest without gambling in Synthahol. Like the economy will collapse, I guess.
But they're not a city; they're a military outpost. I get at the end, they're like the last hotel at the end of the world. I get that by the end of the episode, but at the beginning, they're just a military outpost. Can't they just make a commissary like open?
Well, but everybody else is leaving, so he sees everything leaving, and he knows. I mean, I think Cisco does a good job of recognizing that they need commerce.
Why do they need
all the Bajorans are going back to Bajor? Everybody's leaving.
If it's a military outpost, why do they need a civilian? Why do they need a civilian population to begin with?
Because he's got a kid that needs friends.
So just to keep,
Jake has already asked him, "Will there be kids there?" And he said,
he's gonna make good on that. So making sure the bar stays open is the first step.
Right.
So the first kid he sees, he throws in jail to make the bar keep open.
Yeah. Hey, I'm going to keep at least one kid here that my kid can play with in the brig.
Don't worry, Jake. That kid's not going anywhere.
Okay. So what else of like what other beats of the show did you like or not like, or did everybody?
I noticed. Well, O'Brien at one point when Kira comes in, I forget who he talks to, but he says, "Oh, you've never served with any Bajoran women, have you?" Meaning, like, he's only served with one Bajoran woman, Ensign Rowe, right?
Yes.
And if we're supposed to be so forward-thinking and evolved, how come he meets one Bajoran woman and decides, they're all bitches?
Yes.
He's stereotyping really fast. Oh, you've never served with a Bajoran before. Bajoran women, that is.
O'Brien is a lot like your average Reddit poster. I meet one. Yeah, no.
No, I think Wade brings up a good point. Oh, I think in doing this rewatch, O'Brien is the most awkwardly placed character here.
Yeah.
Because he was not much more than set dressing for like 5 years.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden we're supposed to listen to him say words for, 45 minutes. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, he literally had I think there were a couple of O'Brien episodes on Deep Space.
Yeah, well, because his wife, he had the whole pregnancy.
Yeah, with Worf.
I know.
And
But,
they have his little girls running around for a while on TNG.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about that goodbye with Picard and and O'Brien? It's like that was the most awkwardly.
That was the most Britishy thing I've ever watched.
I liked it. Yeah.
I liked it a lot, but it's like, Picard is clearly the boss who barely notices his employees because he barely had any. He was trying to come up with he was trying to build a moment, and he's like,
I love how you do your job. This is your favorite transporter room. Why the hell would...
This is your favorite transporter?
I feel like I know O'Brien as a character. I've spent a lot of time with him.
Sure.
He doesn't strike me as someone that would have a fucking favorite transporter room.
Really?
Really? Because he does to me.
Me too. He seems very particular.
I don't get it. I don't know. It seems to me that he's, because there's a thing about him. He's the only non-enlisted we've ever really gotten to know in Star Trek. So he was drafted, or he
was drafted.
He filled out a form at job fair at his plant, in Ireland. I'm like, he didn't get into his safety school, and so he went and joined Starfleet.
Right.
He's an enlisted. He's the only enlisted soldier we ever really get to meet on the show. I don't know if Voyager has one or not.
They don't.
I didn't know that was a thing. Enlisted.
What?
I didn't think that was a thing in the Federation.
Yeah.
No, there's officers, Starfleet officers go to the academy. The enlisted people are just like the scrub, just like in real life.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's he joined the military. He
never went to Starfleet Academy. Then.
No. That's why he can't get promoted. That's why he's petty officer. That's why he can't, I think he's at his maximum promotion level. He's essentially, when you hear, someone retire from the military at, major, they've been in it for 40 years and they're a major sergeant, that just means that they can't promote you to anything more because you never had officer training. So he's an enlisted guy. And so he's really at his peak. At some point he's going to retire and go do something else. And they're just trying to eke out another 6 months of his usage so that he can retire at a higher pay pension. And I think that's why he's taken, if it was real military, that's why he's taken the job. Mm-hmm. So he's like a work-a-day dude. He's going to at some point go back to Ireland and go back to school on the GI Bill and run, and run a Target or something, be an executive manager of a Target. That's his future.
In this post-capitalist future where nobody has any money.
Well, I don't know about post-capitalist future, but I mean that's what he's not. He doesn't get to do specialer things. So, so it's nice to see just sort of a workaday dude. I don't know. I like seeing that, and I just don't think. I get that he's particular about his tools and he's good at his job. They make that very clear in this episode. But there's a lot of I don't know, I got a favorite transporter room and I'm really particular about my captains and all of that. I don't know. I feel like it was just more Star Trek stoking and not necessarily in O'Brien's character. That's all I've got to say about it.
So I think we're kind of split on O'Brien. I think that I like what they're trying to do with O'Brien. I just think that they miss most of the time.
I do too. I
think he's fine in this.
wait, no. I love Cole Meany, and I love I think he's a great actor, and I love the character of O'Brien, and I like him in this show.
Really?
What?
I really don't. I don't like him until later. I think right at this point, I am.
You think he's particularly bad in this episode?
I'm like, why is he? He's not bad. Just not interesting.
Yeah, they struggle.
Yeah,
I think I read somewhere that they stuck him in the show because they thought he was going to leave.
Oh.
It's because he started, because he's like a movie for a while in the 90s. He was like a movie star,
right? Out of all of he's the most dependable actor. He never really sucks.
he's in like movies. He was in Layer Cake, and he's on shows still. He still gets. He's still a hard-working actor. He's probably made more money than anybody on the show. So I don't know about Renee Auberjonois with that Benson money. I don't know how much that went, but I mean, like Cole Meany, Cole Meany's got a good career, and I think that what happened is that they had a extra on the Next Generation that liked being an extra on Next Generation, who apparently started taking movie roles, and they thought he was going to leave. So Rick Berman pinned him with a bigger role. They felt like they had an up and coming movie star.
That makes sense.
Or like character actor.
Oh, you think? Oh, they had like a hot commodity they're trying to hold on to.
Rick Berman said that they wanted to shuttle him. I think the hope is that someone would leave Star Trek, like I don't know, like not Brent Spiner, but like Geordi or something. But they kept those actors around, and that then you can move Cole Meany up to a role, kind of like when Tasha Yar left Next Generation. That made a space.
Oh, so they put him on the B team, is what you're saying?
Yeah, he was like an understudy for like a better role, kind of like how Michael Dorn got to be a bigger role when Tasha Yar died. So I think that was what they were doing. And it just never happened. So they were like, let's stick him on the, because they're trying to get every Next Generation.
So Star Trek stacking the deck.
Yes.
Star Trek stacking the deck in case something doesn't pan out.
Yes.
That's what you're trying to say.
You have two great first basemen. It's time to trade one of them to Deep Space Nine.
Right.
So I think that's what they did.
Death to the opposition.
Yes. And maybe to keep them off of Babylon 5, which I think was a thing at the time. So
right. That was at the same time, I guess. Mm-hmm. All right. So, do we need to talk about any of the new characters introductions, or?
Yeah, I guess first time we're ever talking about any of these people. Is Odo good? Is Renee Auberjonois good?
So we talked about Dax's addiction, and she was worried about getting fired.
Yes.
We talked about Cisco. We don't like Jake. We're kind of split on O'Brien. Uh-huh. What do you guys think about our new first officer, Major Kira, who is actually a first officer it's the first time we have somebody second in command that is not a Starfleet officer.
Very true.
I feel like they really wish they had Michelle. What's her name?
Michelle Forbes.
Yeah.
Not a visitor is everybody's favorite second choice. No, I've already had this conversation with you. So I think she's awful.
Really?
Right.
And I think she's shrill. I think she's acting like a 14-year-old boy. I think like that's the way she's playing her role. But that being said, I think the show writes.
I think the opposite.
I think the show writes her well.
They wrote her as a 14-year-old boy in this. Because they're like, oh, she's another.
She gets a scene at the end, and I think that in comparison, she does better in her sort of big like the scene between the stare down with the Cardassians. I think she's just as good in that scene as Riker is in any of his decision making.
I think she does well in that scene. I don't hate her as much as you do. I don't think.
No, I don't know. There's something about her that just doesn't. She's pitched so broad and so like angry. There's not a nuance. There's not.
Yeah. I blame that on the writing.
Yeah.
Okay. I like her performance. I like how wild-eyed she is. I like how she's basically somebody who had a very traumatic life. She's been like in battle mode her entire life. The war's over and she still hasn't dialed it down any. I like that about her performance. I think it's very interesting. I think she's got a wild look in her eye, and the chip on her shoulder is. I don't know. I think it's interesting.
I think it's like we've all people who know us know that we've all done our fair share of small level theater.
Sure.
And you know that when you miscast, there's a way that you can miscast an actress to play outside, like, or an actor or anybody to play outside of their type, that they end up projecting so broadly that it's such a sort of a large, funny performance where she ends up shouting all of her lines are delivered like, everything is pitched at such a high level that it's grating to me. And it wears me down over, like, if I remember watching it my first run through, her performance ultimately wears me down and I end up giving a shit about her. And I like her. Like,
I like how relentless she is.
Yes.
I like that. I like that she's always dialed up to 10, and no matter what the situation is. And I like that about her. And I think they actually use that to some certain extent.
Yeah.
Because she's like an unwieldy force of nature that Cisco has to figure out how he's going to, like, use on his side.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like her as a character, and I like everything about the character I like on the page. Maybe not her actual dialogue, because it's Star Trek. There's boners all over this place.
Sure.
But
yes.
But I mean, I like the idea of this, separatist rebel who's led this awful life, and now she's like at this moment, and I feel like the Bajorans are the way Israelis probably were in the 1950s, like a little bit of chip on your shoulder, a little bit kind of wanting to murder and like victimize some motherfuckers, but also like trying to be, civilized and have a perspective about it and play a smart political game to help her people. And I think that all of that is there in that character. And I don't think that she does much to interfere with it, but just, there's a way that, like, she just, I don't know. I feel like her performance is like a suit that a part of her uniform that she wears and not like a natural part of her. And that is grating to me. But like I said, over the course of the show, her character is very interesting. It never runs out of places to go. They do stuff with her. So she's not like the Riker of the show where it's like they just ran out of ideas for you. So you're just there to spew exposition at us or let people spew exposition at you, so she's definitely a character. So she's better than Riker or something like that. But yeah, she may be my personal least favorite, even though Dax's addiction is way worse in this episode, at least as far as performance. Kira is my least favorite performance.
Hey, Wade.
Uh-huh.
What characters did we miss in the introduction? I feel like we're missing somebody.
Julian's pretty throwaway in this.
He is.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Wet behind the ears.
Yeah. Do you know there's a scene on the bridge where, like, everybody's like, we've got massive I-beam casualties from I-beam.
Yeah. And they're like, hey, why don't you go do your job, asshole?
Yeah, like, why are you fucking here? Go do your job. So there's a scene between him and Odo that is, they just took the dialogue between Hawkeye and Renee Auberjonois' character in the movie MASH. The dialogue between them. Between Bashir and Odo is the dialogue between Hawkeye and whoever character Renee Auberjonois played in MASH. It's just funny. That dialogue. But I don't know. Shouldn't you have a doctor? Get down here and help me. Yeah. Yeah, he's Bashir's awful in this.
Well, that makes sense because your two least favorite people end up getting married in real life, right?
They did. And what was his name? His name, I was always tripped out by his name. On the first season, he's El Sadig Fadar or something.
Right.
Doesn't he have two names?
That's kind of a badass name.
Yeah. But well, like that's their IDIC, infinite diversity and infinite combination. They haven't really had any Egyptian or a Middle Eastern guy.
Yeah.
Who looks like a white guy. But.
Yeah. Sadiq El Tahir. Or El Fadil is what he goes by. Sadiq El Fadil in this season. And then he changes it to Alexander Sadiq. Anyway, so that's always tripped me up.
I didn't realize he changed it to, I remember him as Alexander. I didn't know they had him billed as differently in this one.
Yeah, in the first 2 seasons, I think he was trying to like get his, he was very trying to embrace his roots, and then eventually he was trying to embrace getting a job.
Right.
So,
That works for Star Trek when they're trying to be all diverse, but for the rest of Hollywood, they're like, that sounds okay. You can play a terrorist. How about that?
yeah, and so even now, the terrorist jobs really flooded to him. He was on 24. He was on Syriana. He's been one of the go-to terrorists.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't even pay attention. All I know is that he was on Game of Thrones, where everyone is, hey, it's Dr. Julian Bashir.
Yeah, it's Dr. Bashir. Why are they giving him more things to do on the show?
Yeah, right.
So yeah, he's nothing yet, so we don't have to talk about him much. Our Quark.
Oh yeah.
I think I like Quark more than I think I would. I think
Armin Shimmerman does a great job with him. I think.
Yeah.
He's fantastic. He can convey so much under all that makeup.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he's played so many Ferengis by this point. They're like, oh, well, if we have to put him in as a regular role, he's played a Ferengi every time we've had one.
Yeah. He was like, he's an interesting, and he's great in Buffy too. I love that character so much, and I don't think that I like him for the comic relief crap, which is how he's used. I think it's interesting.
He's one of the more complex characters.
He's a very American character.
He's a capitalist.
He's the capitalist point of view for everything.
Yeah, but like there's this like sort of like, all of these Starfleet officers, you get to them, and I don't recognize these motherfuckers. I don't know who these people are. Everybody's so good, and everybody's so like, nobody fights, and nobody like is basic, and Picard never just gets up and is fucking grumpy and yells at like somebody for no reason.
Unless a kid gets on the bridge.
Unless a kid's there, and then he's stoic. Yeah. But no, there's something about watching like an American on the show, and Quark is definitely that.
Right.
Yeah, especially nowadays, I want more Americans in our sci-fi. Everybody wants, we're going to be all serious, so we're going to throw more British people. I mean, I'm excited about Star Wars. I love all the actors, but it's like, how come we can't have Americans anymore?
Yeah, the beautiful thing about Han Solo was American.
Yeah.
I'm not of this. I'm not like a big right wing nut. Obviously, you guys know that.
Right,
I'm a big left wing nut, but there is something about watching somebody who's so driven by money, and that sort of drives all of his interpersonal relationships, that I think is so interesting.
Well, it's interesting because the whole conceit of Star Trek being we've evolved beyond capitalism, but at the same time being this infinite diversity and infinite combination where we're going to respect everybody's views so that there's like, so we're post-capitalist, but at the same time, we can't be fuck your ideology because we're supposed to be about acceptance. Right. So it's cool that they finally worked that.
And they're not truly post-capitalist, because else he wouldn't have needed Quark to stay on Deep Space Nine. Well, he needed that to foster a better environment, which is
for the Bajorans, anyways. And because even Quark says at some point, it's like, hey, I'm not going to be acting under Federation rules, because he knows that doesn't involve capitalism or money.
Yeah. Yes. So, I liked all of that. I was going to say, while we're kind of at the end here, that one of the things that didn't occur to me until I was reading up on some of the stuff about this episode is that Rick Berman pitched it as a Western town with like Cisco as the sheriff, and Kira's like the native attaché, and Odo's Cisco's the mayor, and Odo's the sheriff, and Quark is the Al Swearingen type saloon keeper.
Oh, there's a Deadwood.
Yeah, it was like, because I guess Gene Roddenberry pitched Star Trek as Wagon Train in Space.
Right. Well, did you guys know that Gene Roddenberry, actually wrote for Gunsmoke, the radio play, and he also wrote, he actually did write Have Gun Will Travel.
Oh, really?
The radio show. Yeah, he was a radio play writer before, or at the beginning of television.
Oh, interesting.
And I've actually listened to one of his episodes on the Internet Archive. Mm-hmm. You can listen to old time radio.
Oh yeah.
And I've actually listened to one of the episodes of Have Gun Will Travel that Gene Roddenberry wrote, and it is horribly racist. it is almost you can almost not. I mean, yes. So he has Roddenberry has he's steeped in the 20th century Western ideals and archetypes. So that doesn't surprise me.
Well, talking about one thing that really is like for a pre 9/11 show. Sorry to go here. It's like
okay. We're gonna have to bring 9/11 into every podcast. So you did work for us. So okay.
Well, no, just like before when we were talking about Bajor and the Next Generation stuff, it's basically space Israel.
Yeah,
but now it's basically space Iraq, except it's before Iraq got all fucked up. They're talking about they have a highly religious society where they have a big emphasis on the prophets. And now that they've just come out of a war and an occupation, they're all split up into factions. And Kira's like, oh, it'll never last. This government's going to fall apart.
Also, they have a commodity that everybody wants.
Yeah.
So, we didn't talk about – it's basically the wormhole at the end of this episode is basically space oil.
Yes.
And I think we can go a little long on this episode since we actually are covering 2 episodes. Yeah. And this is our inaugural episode as well as the pilot for the 1.5-hour pilot. This is ostensibly –
it's a movie.
Like a movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like Wade touched upon, Sisko is given a character arc. At the beginning, he's wanted out of Starfleet. He's been traumatized by the death of his wife and raising his son alone. He's been given a shitty assignment where nobody wants to be, except for Bashir because he's an ignorant asshole.
Yes. He's a dumb shit.
And he actually uses the word frontier space. And he does it with a bunch of Bajorans who are just like, Frontier, this is like my home, you asshole.
To make it a Deadwood parallel, he's like the guy who took Alma Garrett out into the I'm going to go pan for oil even though I'm a rich asshole. And he ends up getting killed. Yeah.
Right. And so, and at the end, the wormhole is opened, which changes the political, implications of Bajor.
Yeah.
And they give Sisko the ability to move on with his life due to meeting the celestial beings that live inside the wormhole. And I guess it's an artificial wormhole, but it's still not clear as to how or why the beings made the wormhole.
Right.
I'm not even sure that's ever really addressed, ever.
Yeah, I think they're like a wormhole group.
The how and why doesn't matter.
I don't think so, but, in the wormhole, they can live in non-linear time, and then when anybody enters it, it causes them pain because they don't know how to think linearly.
Right.
Yeah.
Sisko lives in linear time, but he's also stuck living in the death of his wife.
Yeah.
So that's like the thing that solves the question, and they can understand each other at the end.
Yeah.
And then basically the episode is over. Cisco tells Picard, fuck you still, but I'm staying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not going to smile, but I like what I'm doing here. Yeah.
Right.
That was the one thing I was going to say. At that point, and I'm just putting myself in Picard's shoes here, I would be worried about that. And I think he kind of is, because he's like, should I not? How can I ignore what you told me in the first scene we had together?
Right.
Right.
But it seems like, okay, so you have this guy, he goes into a wormhole, he comes out, he's kind of grinny now, and he's got like a different pep in his step, and he's experienced something in the wormhole that makes him totally gung-ho to do the job now. Wouldn't Picard be worried that he got like crazied?
Well, that's what I thought about was great. Well, I mean, that's why he's the best actor in all of Star Trek.
Yeah.
He can say so little without saying much. Because I even just watching it, it's like, okay, I don't trust this guy. He's not like, okay, Sisko, whatever you want. He's like, okay, well, I can't do that. You said you wanted to do this. I'm a military man, I can't. And but at the same time, he's like, I kind of owe this guy because I did kill his wife.
and I mean, you know, because Picard gave him like a personal job too. Picard's like, I've come to love the Bajoran people because there was Michelle Forbes last season,
Right.
and like, and so like, do this up, and they want to. I think they should join the Federation. A lot of people want them to join the Federation, and for some reason, there's not much here to make the Federation want to join them.
Yeah.
You know, or to welcome them in. So you got to give them something, and he goes and gives them the wormhole, which is like one of the hottest spots in the galaxy now. So
it's like the only stable wormhole in existence.
Right.
yeah, and so obvious, and to the to an unexplored part of the Milky Way. So obviously, Bajor is now important. So obviously, Bajor will be welcome. You know, it's like whenever you hear that like Turkey's in NATO, you're like, how did that shit country get in NATO?
Yeah, right.
It's because at one point it was advantageous to put them in.
Sorry to our Turkish audience. We love you.
Sorry, we love you, and you're great members of NATO, whatever that means.
Yeah, we don't have a Turkish audience.
But like you're like, how the hell did Turkey warrant getting in NATO? Well, it's because at one point it served a good function, and Bajor is now going to get in on the Turkey clause, and so basically he did everything that Picard asked him to do. But I would just be worried that he's like now a weird religious nut.
Right. Well, yeah, I think Picard to an extent is like, okay, well, man, I was going to give this guy this shit detail, even though I love the Bajoran people and I want them to join the Federation. But now it's a lock. And, man, I would like to get somebody I trust in here, but I did kill this guy's wife.
I can't.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I can't. And he's got a son. He said,
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I don't know. That was like, I think that was just something I was just like, wouldn't that have been like a worry that would have been is now. And I know that the rest of the episodes deal with that, with the religion. And, you know, it's not so much that Avery Brooks feels that he met the face of God, but everybody feels like he's now God. But it's still, it's just a strange thing. Every time I watch that scene, I'm like, you need to ask more questions about what happened in the wormhole, it seems to me.
Right.
I did notice that one of the people that saved Avery Brooks on the Saratoga was Mott the Nosy Barber's was one of his kin. It was one of the Blueface people.
Yeah. They brought Mott's near-do-well cousin.
Yes.
Yeah.
To help him out. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, I guess before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you guys one question.
Okay.
Yeah. So, if there's anything that you could change about this episode, what would you do?
You go first, you.
All right. I think the first thing I would do is I would figure out a way. I'd get a different, since it's the first episode, I'd get rid of O'Brien.
What?
I would. I know this is a very unpopular opinion, but I would probably figure out there's got to be a more interesting engineer out there than like using a part of the Next Generation set dressing. And I know that
I can't use Geordi. He costs too much.
Well, just like don't import anybody. Like bring somebody brand new in. It's a little bit weird, and I don't know. I didn't enjoy this. I didn't enjoy him in this episode. It's something to keep an eye on as we go on.
I do know in the next few episodes, it's his wife doesn't like the assignment, and so he's got like lots of marital, like he's got like marital issues, and I like that in the show.
Yeah,
because he's kind of. I mean, she's not. I mean, she's right, but like he's mostly like related to the fact that he's got this. He's got a fully formed life like Picard or Riker never did. He goes back to a life at home in his little cell, and his wife's pissed because she doesn't like that they went from being on the Enterprise to being in this shithole.
The flagship.
Yes. Yeah, and then now she's on a shithole, and I like that about it, that he's got to deal with all that stuff, and that's in the next few.
Well,
episodes.
That's something we'll definitely keep an eye out for next week.
Yeah.
What? All right, who's going next on this? On the change, you guys have any change? If you don't have any changes, you can just pass.
I felt like they rushed stuff, and then there was like that whole sequence with the Cardassians at the Domjot table or whatever, and like the whole thing with getting him back on the ship and getting Odo on the ship. all basically so they could sneak away from the car. That's a lot of writing to just basically sneak away from the Cardassians.
Yeah.
When it seemed to me like the whole time I don't even understand why the Cardassians are a thing there. Because, I mean, like,
why did they have to get them all?
why did they let them
Right?
into... I mean, can't you just say, hey, dudes, you just had a peace treaty. Maybe don't go to our gambling establishments for a little while. Like, I understand.
yeah.
I understand if Gul Dukat wants to come in and talk to him. Like, that's an official. That's a military officer talking to a military officer. That's fine. That's how these things are supposed to happen. But don't have the card. Like, don't let the Cardassians just drink and run wild on your ship. That seems crazy. And then get to they basically just wanted to show that Odo could look like a bag of gold.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's all, look at this fancy morphing technology that you haven't seen since Michael Jackson's Black or White video. It's computers. Woo!
Yeah, that's really all that they did on that episode. And it was like, but because that's there, they had to rush, like, the whole ending.
Yeah, and there's like, okay, we're going to show all this problems, how to get him on the Cardassian ship, but then we just teleport him back. Oh, he's at the exit point. Ta-da!
Yeah, because you have this, like, you introduced this religious thing. The
Kai Alpaca.
Kai Alpaca, gives him this stuff, fingers his paw, and then gives him a pimp cup, and
Yeah, the orbs, not very round.
yes, it's the pimp cup of the prophet's paw, is what I wrote in my notes. They gave him a pimp cup and sent him back. I mean, so I get why all that's there, but it seems like you need to tie that in. That's a major part of the story, and they don't go back and have him talk to Kai Alpaca. They don't call him the Emmisary, which is the title of the episode. Like, they don't establish any of that this episode, but I know a lot about how Cardassians gamble. So that's what I would change.
I just learned that all aliens love tits. Doesn't matter what kind of skeleton face they have.
I remember.
You just put a nice rack on them, and they're drooling.
I was like that too. And as she walked by, I was like, "Yeah, are we supposed to be turned on by her, even though she's got like a vulture face?" And I think we were. And it's an interesting time. After Star Trek went in interesting directions after Gene Roddenberry left us.
Wade, what would you change if you were going to change anything?
I think James makes a good point with the Odo on the Cardassian ship, and then they just skip over getting them back, which seems like
It was kind of clumsy, wasn't it?
just throw some phazon energy at it to block their sensors and just call it a day.
Yeah. Whatever, just do some. They moved the whole ship by means I don't understand. Why?
Oh yeah, that seemed kind of cheap.
Why can't you just evade the Cardassians through means I don't understand? It doesn't matter.
Oh no way! You know how they moved the ship faster? It was going to take 2 months to get to the wormhole.
Yes.
But then they had the idea to make the ship lighter, and if they made the ship lighter, they could move it faster.
I don't think that's how space and gravimetric physics works, because weight is not a thing.
Well, I think you're in space.
Mass, you could change the mass somehow, but then everybody's bones would break immediately.
Yeah.
But weight is not a thing in space. You're wrong. I went to space camp. I know.
That bothered me. That bothered me a lot.
Yeah, that got by because I did find out that they have to put every script through there's even in I guess in the 90s there was a nerd core of super fans that Berman employed to read the scripts. And all of their notes are on Memory Alpha. What they sent back is
whoa,
yeah. And on Memory Alpha, it says the notes for this episode was that in the original script, Kai Alpaca said that the orbs came to them over 1,000 years ago, but in the Ro Lauren episode, Ensign Ro episode of Next Generation, it says that the Bajorans were walking upright before humans evolved on Earth.
Oh yeah.
Or were running great. So they had to put it back way further. So she said over the last 100,000 or 10,000 or something like that. So they had to move it back to make the religion seem older in scope. So that I agree. That's the kind of nitpicking I kind of agree with. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's called continuity.
Exactly. Yeah. I like that. Keep that in order, but I don't really care about the interiors of the runabout.
Yeah.
If you're into that stuff, this is the first appearance of a runabout.
Oh, really?
Which you spend a lot of time on in the show, yeah.
Yes, they do. Yeah, the only ship they show in the opening credits is a runabout shuttle.
Yes.
They don't even show the planet, and they don't show Bajor. It's just look at another angle.
Yeah, I have no idea what Bajor looks like.
It's blue.
Is it?
It's beige.
It should be.
Yes, it's earth tones and blue. But okay,
all right.
That's all I've got to say. I mean, this is a good episode. This is
I think it's great.
I think this is just good TV, man. I think this is.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up. We kind of went over a little bit, but it's our first episode. I think that makes sense.
Anything for you to say, Hugh?
I'm good, guys. Can't wait to watch the next episode and meet you back here next week.
Yep. I will be here then.
I agree. Thanks for listening to the rules of acquisition. Maybe we'll talk some more about those as we progress through things.
Oh, yes. We should actually learn what they are.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a lot of them.
Yes, there are. Okay, cool.
That's all.
See you guys later.
Please follow us on Twitter at AcquisitionPod and on Tumblr at the Rules of Acquisition Podcast.tumblr.com. Send us an email at rulesofacquisitionpodcast@gmail.com. You can turn this off now. It's pretty pathetic that you are still listening. Do you not have friends, or a hobby that is not Star Trek podcast related? That is possibly why people are fearful for the future of our society. We believe in you. We know you are better than this.